How did you end up choosing UCLA for college? I see that you were recruited by 350 colleges back when you were in high school.
Pretty much. It came down between Michigan and UCLA. I really liked Michigan when I went there. I was probably most impressed with not only their athletic program, but they had a 100,000 seat stadium, and I just could not believe that 100,000 people would pour into a football game, and not only pour into a football game, but do it week after week after week. That was unbelievable to me. And then I just sort of liked the way they ran the program there. I mean, they have a long history of and so forth. So so I sort of got locked into that opportunity that Michigan was going to give me an opportunity to play for a championship team. But the problem is that Bo Schembechler wanted me to play quarterback because I played quarterback and free safety in high school, and most of the teams that recruited me was recruiting me as a quarterback, with the notable exception of UCLA. They wanted me to play free safety, and I wanted to play free safety. So when I told Bo Schembechler that I didn't want to play quarterback, he was taken aback by that and said to me, he said, you have to be kidding me. Why would you want to play free safety when you can play quarterback at the greatest football institution in the nation? And I told him that I really thought that I was just a good athlete playing quarterback, but I thought that I could really be a fantastic, strong, free safety. And he just wouldn't buy into that. So when he left my house, he was really upset with me and the fact that I didn't have sense enough to want to take advantage of an opportunity that only few would have a chance to do. And conversely, UCLA, like I said earlier, wanted me as a free safety. So that sort of sealed the deal.
Was part of the problem playing quarterback in Michigan that you would have just been handing off and there would have been no chance to play in the NFL?
That was a consideration. I mean, my dad and I talked about that, and that was something that was a consideration. At that particular time, there wasn't a plethora of black quarterbacks in the National Football League, and it was sort of just coming into vogue at that particular time in college football. But most of these quarterbacks were sort of, option quarterbacks and not really, a throwing quarterback. So we thought about all that stuff, and but I still thought. I mean, that didn't scare me as much as I knew that if you were going to make it to the NFL, you had to be a throwing quarterback, and being a option quarterback at the University of Michigan or anywhere else was not going to get me to my objective, which was to play the National Football League.
When you went to UCLA, what was it like to play for Terry Donahue?
Well, the interesting thing about Terry Donahue, and he'll tell you this himself, is that when I got there in 1977, that was his first season as a head coach, and I think he was, he had to go through a learning process, and so because it was his first season, I think he sort of overreacted when it came to disciplining the players. And he'll tell you that today. And so we really didn't get along famously when I was there because he thought that I was, too much of a hothead, or thought I was, uncoachable and so forth. So we bumped heads a great deal, the first couple of years. In fact, I believe it was my junior year. He actually kicked me off the team, and it was the athletic director who sort of overrode that, and J.D. Morgan was the athletic director, and said, look, we brought this kid out here 3,000 miles, from home, and we're just not going to kick him off the team for what he did. It was nothing. I mean, other than the fact that I hit the quarterback who had a red jersey on, and so J.D. Morgan just wasn't going to have any of that, and came to my defense and said, the kid is 18. He made a mistake. You just can't kick him off the team, for doing something like that. So.
Because Coach Donahue recruited you, right? Or was it Coach Vermeil who wanted you more?
No, it was Coach Donahue. Donahue is who recruited me, and the one that signed me to come to UCLA. So, but luckily, cooler heads prevailed, and J.D. Morgan, who, like I said, was the athletic director, stepped in and said, we just can't do this. So after a couple of days or so, maybe a week or so, Terry Donahue, through the defensive coordinator, told me to come back on the football team. So, so Terry and I have, sort of a rocky relationship. I spoke to him after I made the Hall of Fame, and that was the first time I had spoken to him since I left UCLA in 1981. And he called, and we talked passionately, and it was good to talk to him, and hash out those things that had bothered our relationship 30 years ago.
The freshman playing back then was unheard of.
I got an opportunity to play right off the bat. We had on the depth chart when I got there in 1977. The depth chart had a senior free safety named Michael Coulter at number 1, and then a junior free safety by name Johnny Gibbs at number 2, and then we in our freshman class we had 2 freshman free safeties, and Dave Gomer and a kid by the name of Kenny Easley. So, I had a big mountain to climb, and but I came to UCLA on a mission, and because there were so many people here in Virginia and from my high school that didn't think that I could do it. And so I was on a mission to show them that they were wrong. And so the first game of the season, we played the Houston Cougars in the Astrodome in Houston. And the defensive coordinator played Michael Coulter the first 2 quarters of the first half, and I played the second 2 quarters of the second half. And Michael Coulter never started another game. And but no, I didn't find it easy. I mean, it was hard work, and I believe I had 7 and led the conference, and defensive freshman player of the year, and it was just on my way from there. I mean, I got better. We had a coaching change on defense, and brought in Gary Blackney for the defensive back coach, and learned a great deal from him. And then by my senior year, they brought in Tom Hayes, and also learned a great deal from him. But I was very fortunate. I got some good coaching, so very fortunate. And but also, I was a hard worker. So
I see you were a good basketball player. Was there any temptation? Is that one of the reasons you choose UCLA is because of basketball? Did they say you could play two sports there, or did it just happen that you played JV basketball there?
It just happened. I mean, basketball was good conditioning for me, and I was really discovered because I was playing intramural basketball, and then the JV coach asked me to come out for the JV team. And so yeah, I mean, as long as I was running and getting the benefit of exercising, and I thought, like I said, basketball was good conditioning for a football player. I said, yeah, no problem, and had a great time doing it. Led the JV team in scoring, and but I never thought about anything other than that being good conditioning for what I needed to do on the football field.
Did you feel football took a back seat to basketball when you were at UCLA because of all the championships they won, or were they treated equally?
Oh no, absolutely. Basketball was the dominant sport at UCLA. Even then, I mean, John Wooden had just retired the year before I got there, and but basketball still was the cream of the sports there. And Terry Donahue was just, like I say, he that was his first year, my freshman year, and but he went on to have some really successful football teams in the 80s with Troy Aikman and all the other players that came along. And but basketball was king, and it's getting to be that again with the teams that they have currently at UCLA.
What was your best game in college, you think, at football?
I really don't think I had a best game. I think that I was fairly consistent all the way through, and because of the way I played, it would just be hard to say best game for me, because I went out with the intention of playing every game the best that I could play, because I was uniquely aware that any one of those games could have been my last game. And so if either one of those games were going to be my last game that I played, I wanted people to be able to say that, this guy was, the last game he played was the best game he played. And that's the way I played every game. So unlike some players who can go to a particular game and say, yeah, that was my best game, I can't say that because I played every game as if it was going to be my last game.
So you made 3 All-American teams. Did you have any idea that the Seahawks were going to draft you in '81?
Absolutely not. In fact, the day before the draft, Bill Walsh and his entire defensive staff came down to UCLA and worked me out. And afterward, Bill asked me to meet him and the coaches in Pauley Pavilion. And so I went in, took a shower, and came back out. And Bill and his defensive staff was sitting about 10 rows up in the stands. And I sat down. He says, "Hey, look, we have the 8th pick in the first round tomorrow. If we selected you with our 8th pick, would you be okay with that?" I said, "Absolutely." And we did a little bit of the talking, and I asked him if he would play me at free safety, and he said he would. And because I knew that they had Dwight Hicks was playing free safety for him, and I remember I first met Dwight Hicks at Michigan when I went there for my recruiting visit in 1977. And so I had a great deal of respect for the work that Dwight Hicks had done at Michigan and the work he was doing at the 49ers at free safety. So I was concerned about that. Wanted to know, what they were gonna if they drafted me, what they were gonna do. And he said, right away, yeah, we're gonna play you there, and we'll figure out what we'll do, with Dwight Hicks. So that's where I thought I was going. I actually called a few people, like my mom, and told her that pretty good chance I'm going to go to San Francisco tomorrow, and she didn't like that because that just drew me further from home than I would be in Los Angeles. And told a couple of my buddies that I was going to San Francisco. So when Seattle drafted me the next day, I was really upset and thought about telling Lee Steinberg, who was my agent, to engineer a trade. But when I went out to Seattle the day of the draft, I was really taken aback by the acceptance of the fans. It seemed like the fans were really excited to have me there and have me a part of the team. So I decided that would forego any type of trade and go out and play for the Seattle Seahawks fans. And I absolutely don't regret it now, because Seattle have the best fans in the National Football League, and that was evident some 30 years ago that they wanted Kenny Easley to be a part of their organization.
What was it like to play for Jack Patera?
Well, Jack was a different guy. He was, first of all, when I got there in 1981, the organization was only 5 years old. They had just come in the league 5 years prior to me getting there in 1976. So the team, was still trying to find its way. Didn't have a great deal of talent. They had Jim Zorn and Steve Largent on offense. And those two guys were sort of the offensive show. Defensively, they were still trying to build the defense So I give Jack Patera a great deal of credit because before I got there, they drafted Manu Tuiasosopo in 1978. I mean, 79 at the number one draft pick. And then in 1980, they drafted Jacob Green, the defensive end out of Texas A&M, as the number one pick. And then in 1981, they drafted me as the number one pick. And then 1982, they drafted another defensive player as the number one pick. And Jeff Bryant, I believe it was. So they were really working on building the offense. Building the defense. I'm sorry. And so, Jack was definitely trying to build the defense, but he was just. He had his issues, because he got fired about 2 or 3 years after I got in there, and then Chuck Knox came in there in 1983, and brought in a bunch of veteran players with him, and Reggie McKenzie, Harold Jackson, Charlie Young, Colin Bryant, and those guys came in there and basically taught us how to win, because we were a young football team, and bringing those guys in with him, they taught us how to play football and how to play pro football in particular. And we started winning right away. I mean, Jack get there in 81, Chuck get there in 81, and we go. The very first year we're there, we go to the AFC Championship game and lost to the Raiders, who ended up beating the Washington Redskins in the Super Bowl that year. But we had beaten the Raiders twice during the regular season in 1983. Beat them in Los Angeles, and then we beat them in Seattle. And then 1984, we went 12-4, played the Miami Dolphins again in the first round of the playoffs, and lost to them this time, where we had beat them of the year before. So, so I know your question was Jack Patera, but Jack had a tough job in front of him. Because he was the very first coach of the Seahawks, and so it was tough sledding for Jack Patera.
You had a pretty good defense. No, I mean, you're right. I mean, he basically was the first coach, and he had a lot of pressure starting an expansion franchise. But you had a pretty good defensive backs coach, Jack Christensen, a Hall of Famer. How much did he contribute to your early success with Seattle?
Well, you're right about Jack. Hall of Famer and good coach. But I don't think it was Jack's decision. I think it was Jack Patera's decision, because Jack Patera sort of took a look at me and probably thought that I was a run stopping defensive back, so let's put him at strong safety. When I had played free safety basically all of my life, from the time I was in Pop Warner football, I played free safety. Played free safety in middle school, played free safety in high school, and obviously played free safety at UCLA. But when I get to Seattle, they put me at strong safety. And I should have demanded that I play free safety. I think I had the right to do that as the number one draft pick. But I grew up in an environment where when you were asked to do certain things, you learned how to do it and did it. And so when they asked me to play strong safety, instead of bucking the system and saying I want to play free safety. I just did it because that was the type of environment that I grew up in when I was coming along. And, although I regretted that I didn't, tell them I wanted to play free safety, I did what they wanted me to do and tried to make the best out of it. And I don't believe that was Jack Christensen's decision as much as it was Jack Patera's decision.
So when Coach Knox took over in '83, he put you at free safety, and that's when the interceptions, you started getting a lot more interceptions?
No, left me at strong safety, but we had a defensive coordinator in Tom Catlin, who sort of revamped our defense and just put me in position to make plays on defense. And so he took advantage of my athletic ability and designed our defense to take advantage of what I did best. And that was run and hit and make plays.
Because, when you think of interceptions with safeties, it's usually the free safety, not the strong. And for you to do it strong was really an accomplishment.
Well, like I said, Tom Catlin put me in position in our defensive scheme. We went from a two-high safety defense to a single-free safety. And so playing strong safety from 4 to 6 yards off the line of scrimmage. And also in our nickel and our dime schemes, he always put me in a position where I had a chance to affect the offense. And so I have to, thank Tom Catlin for, seeing the wisdom in taking advantage of the things that I did best.
Was there a game that stood out in the NFL as your best game, or was it similar to college? Every game was the same for you?
Yeah, that's the only way I knew how to play. Is lay it out there every game. And if I got hurt, so be it. If I never played again, that's the nature of the beast. But I was going to play as if it was going to be my last game. And in hindsight, I don't regret that, because I believe that because I played that way is the reason why I got another look as a Hall of Famer when I was in the senior division. I think they looked at the way that Ken Easley played and said that, we have to consider this guy as a Hall of Fame player because of what he did. And, you look at his record and the things that he did in the 7 years, just like Terrell Davis, although Terrell Davis played 7 years, he got rushed for 7,000 yards in 7 years. That hadn't been done that many times, and if at all. And like when you look at Ken Easley's career, and that he was NFL Defensive Player of the Year, AFC Rookie of the Year, Pro Bowls, and All-Pro performer, all decade in the 80s. That maybe, just maybe, the way he played was special enough to be reconsidered for the Hall of Fame.
Here's a record that I don't think will ever be broken, a team record. 4 interceptions for touchdowns in a game. That 1984 game against the Chiefs. You had one of them. What was that game like?
Well, no doubt, it was a game for the ages, because we had, like you said, 6 interceptions in that game, and returned 4 for NFL record, 4 touchdowns. So, from a player perspective, it wasn't much of a game. I mean, because we dominated the game. I believe we beat them 45-0 in that game. So it wasn't one of our harder games, and it just turned into a cakewalk of a game. I mean, those are games that you like to play in, because once you get up by a certain amount of points, then the team has to throw almost every down. So, I think when we got up by 30 points or more, they threw the football every play. So after that, so all you have to do as a defender is jump every route. And you're probably going to make an interception at some point if you're jumping every route. And the only reason you would jump every route is because you're 30 points ahead, and you know that they have to throw, and it's going to increase your chances of making interceptions. So I've played in better games, more interesting games. But certainly, when you're playing a game like that and you get 6 interceptions and 4 of them return for interceptions, it's a big joy. I mean, that you can play in a game and produce the results that we produced in that particular game.
Who was the leader of those defenses in the mid '80s with Seattle? Was it you, or was it Jacob Green?
Yeah, I would say that the defensive leaders was Jacob Green. I would say that our entire defensive line was the catalyst of our defense, with Jacob Green, Jeff Bryant, and Joe Nash. Because those guys put a great deal of pressure on the quarterback, which made my job in the secondary a whole lot easier. When a quarterback is being pressured all the time, he's going to throw interceptions. And we had a season there in 1984 where I think we had 38 interceptions and 63 turnovers. Finishing just second behind the Chicago Bears, who led the league that year in turnovers. So, yeah, I would say that the guys who set the table for the rest of the defense were Jacob Green, Joe Nash, and Jeff Bryant.
When you went in practice against Steve Largent, did that make you a better football player, or make him a better football player, knowing that you guys were competing against each other every day, and that going in Sunday, the receivers would be a lot easier than a potential Hall of Famer? Well,
I hardly ever played or practiced against Steve unless it was in the off season. During the season, our number 2 defense practiced against the number 1 offense, and the number 1 offense practiced against the number 1 defense. So I hardly ever got a chance to practice against him because of the way that our practice was set up. Now, in the off season, when we were working against one another, I always tried to cover him as many times as I could, as would the rest of the defensive backs, because they knew that Steve was going to make them better covering them. So I would say in a 2-hour workout, I probably get a chance to cover him 8 to 10 times in between, all of the rest of the defensive backs who wanted to cover him. But we had other good receivers too. I mean, obviously none better than Steve, but they were quality NFL receivers. And so if you ended up covering, say, Paul John or Steve Rabel or Ray Butler, you're going to get some good work one way or another. But there's no question that Steve was the best receiver we had. And when you got a chance to cover him, you were covering the best.
Who was the toughest receiver you went up against?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, but you got to understand, playing strong safety, I didn't cover that many receivers. I covered a lot of really quality tight ends. Kellen Winslow, Hall of Famer, Todd Christensen, Ozzie Newsome, Hall of Famer. But those guys I covered in the AFC, but I hardly ever covered wide receivers per se, unless we were in some type of nickel or dime defense, and we had a blitz on, and the strong safety would be responsible for one of the wideouts in a 3 or 4 wideout offense. So that would be our only time, and even then, sometimes we would have double coverage on a wideout. So I didn't get to cover too many receivers, but I covered a lot of great, like I said, Hall of Famer tight end.
And you had some pretty good running backs back in that area you had to try to stop too, with Earl Campbell, Walter Payton, Eric Dickerson, who just, once he got in the secondary, he was gone.
Yep, lots of good running backs.
And Kurt Warner wasn't too shabby before he got injured either.
Kurt Warner was a very, very good running back, and I have no doubt in my mind that had he not torn his knee up, he would have been in consideration as a Hall of Fame running back, because he was a terrific running back. Walter Payton, Earl Campbell, just so many, fine running back. Marcus Allen, who we played against in our conference. So, yeah, there were lots of good running backs that we played against in the 80s, and they all were very special and hard to tackle. So there was no doubt that probably the cream of the crop, in my estimation, was Earl Campbell and Walter Payton.
That 1987 strike, how hard was that on the Seahawks as a team?
That was really hard because we had a couple of our veteran players that crossed the picket line on us. And that was really the hardest part of it because they were out there playing with the replacement players when the leg got up running again with the replacement players. And to see our teammates out there playing, it was difficult. It was really difficult. It was a tough time for the NFL, tough time for the players who hung in there and stayed out until the strike was resolved. It took some teams longer than others to resolve those type of issues. And but they all were resolved, at least on our team. And got back to, playing and being respectful of their teammates.
So then, after the '87 season, they tried to trade you to Seahawks, and then you got that horrible medical news. How hard was that on you?
Well, that was, one of the tougher things that I probably had to deal with, not only in my career, but, in my life. 28 years old, at the top of my game, and I find out that I have a kidney ailment. But more importantly, I find out much later, once we had sued the team, that the organization knew about it, and they were trying to unload me, hoping that the team they traded me to would miss it, that I had a kidney ailment. And then the general manager is, when I failed the physical, I was flying back from Arizona, which was the team they traded me to. And when the media finds out that it was a kidney ailment, the general manager says, whatever ailment, that caused Kenny to fail the physical, it was non-football related. And I just could not believe that he would make a statement like that. And when it was clearly, well, at that point, it wasn't clear what had caused the problem. But once we subpoenaed all of my records from 1981 to 1987, that's when we found out that the organization knew about the kidney ailment, and they were going to try to make me someone else's problem. And so that was really disheartening. That team that I had played for and played well for would do that to me. And so after that, I sort of divorced myself from the team for well over probably 15 years or so. And wasn't until 2002 that I ever talked to the team again. And that was when they wanted to placed me in the Ring of Honor after Paul Allen had purchased the team from the owner who bought the team from the Nordstrom family.
What was it like when you found out you're going in the Ring of Honor?
Well, I felt like I should have been in the Ring of Honor. First of all, second of all, grateful of the Paul Allen organization for reaching out to me and sort of bringing me back into the Seahawks family. And thought that it was long overdue. I mean, been away from the team for 15 years and no communication, no anything. That when Gary Wright, who was the vice president of the team at that time, called me and said that Mr. Allen thought that we can't induct anyone else into the Seahawk Ring of Honor until we induct Kenny Easley. It made sense to drop the animosity and do what was the right thing to do after 15 years of absence. You know, plus I had young children then, and they had never seen me play pro football. And, you know, two of them were in their early teens, and then my youngest was 6 years old. So made sense at that time to do it and give them a chance to understand that their dad had played pro football and had done it well.
You mentioned you waited a long time to get in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I still can't believe that they're calling you a senior finalist. I mean, again, I remember watching you play. I guess that must mean I'm old. I always think of seniors are guys who played in the 50s and 60s. But again, like you said, you only played 7 years, and they put Terrell Davis in this year. He had to wait a while, and he played 7 years. Gale Sayers had a short career. But to put a defensive player in who only played 7 years is something, shows that you were something special.
Well, you know, like I said earlier, you know, I had this mindset that I was going to, from the time I entered UCLA, I was going to play every game as if it was my last game. And I think taking that position that I was going to try to leave my best work out there every game. That when they decided to take a fresh look at my career, thanks to Frank Cooney and a guy by the name of Bob Copain, who was sending articles to the Hall of Fame on my career and the things that I had done, decided to take a fresh look and said, hey, you know, just perhaps we need to get away from this criteria that you have to play, you know, double-digit years in order to be considered for the Hall of Fame. When you look at the Hall of Fame, you have Gale Sayers, who played 6 years, and my former defensive back coach, Jack Christensen, I believe, played 8 or 9 years. And so if that's the case, then just maybe we need to take a look at the quality of the years rather than the quantity of the years. And I believe with Terrell Davis and myself getting in as with 7 years of service, and also you can also include in that Kurt Warner, because I believe if you look at just his NFL career, that he may have been just 8 years at NFL as well. And so hopefully with what happened this year will dispel the myth that you have to play double-digit years to even be considered a Hall of Fame type player.
How did it feel like when you got that knock on the door from Dave Baker when he said, Kenny, you're a part of the Hall of Fame? For me, now, it sounds interesting or strange, but it was like Christmas for me. I mean, like being a little kid again, and you go to bed the night before Christmas, knowing Christmas Eve, knowing that Santa Claus is going to come, sometime late in the night, and that's that knock at the door, and then you get to play with your toys, and so I don't know if it's a worthy description, but that's the description and the way that it felt to me when David Baker knocked on that door, and man, I was excited to open the door, and then he announced that Hall of Famer, and now you get to play with your toys. That's how it felt to me, and it may not be an apt description, but that's the only descriptive way that I can explain it. And because when I opened that door and it was David Baker, man, I was excited. My family was excited. I had my wife and children there, and they got to yelling and hugging me and, being excited, tears running down their faces. It's just something that is hard to describe to someone who has not experienced that type of joy.